The screen flickered, illuminating the stern face of Judge Frank Caprio. On the other side, projected larger than life, was Elon Musk, a figure synonymous with innovation, controversy, and a certain brand of unyielding confidence. The courtroom, usually a place of quiet reverence, crackled with an unspoken tension. Judge Caprio, known globally for his compassionate yet firm demeanor, leaned forward, his gaze fixed on the tech titan. His frustration, though carefully contained, was palpable. Musk, ever the showman, offered a slight, almost imperceptible smirk. He was on a video call, his presence a digital intrusion into the traditional setting of the Providence, Rhode Island courtroom. The subject at hand was a court order, a directive aimed at addressing critical employee safety concerns at one of Tesla's sprawling factories in Fremont, California. This wasn't a minor infraction. It was a mandate concerning the well-being of countless individuals. "With all due respect, Judge," Musk began, his voice carrying a practiced calm, "we have our own way of doing things at Tesla. This order is impractical." The implication hung heavy in the air. The court, with its antiquated rules and procedures, simply couldn't grasp the complexities, the sheer velocity, of running a cutting-edge company like Tesla. He seemed to suggest that the very essence of innovation demanded a certain freedom from conventional oversight, a tacit dismissal of the legal framework designed to protect the very workers who built his empire. Judge Caprio, remarkably, did not raise his voice. There was no theatrical gavel bang, no sudden outburst of anger. Instead, his eyes, usually warm and empathetic, narrowed ever so slightly. It was a subtle shift, a tightening of the lines around them that conveyed a deeper, more profound disapproval than any shout ever could. His response was quiet, measured, yet imbued with an authority that resonated through the digital connection. "Mr. Musk," he stated, his voice even, "this court's orders are not suggestions. They are law." This moment of blatant defiance, however, was merely the tip of a much larger iceberg. It was a public challenge, a gauntlet thrown down by one of the world's most powerful individuals against the very system designed to ensure fairness and protection. What the public didn't yet fully grasp was that this single act of dismissal was part of a protracted, much larger legal battle that had been simmering for months. A conflict that would ultimately affect thousands of workers, not just in Fremont, but potentially across the entire landscape of corporate America. It was a stark reminder that sometimes even the most powerful people need a reminder that no one is above the law. The battle lines were drawn. Judge Caprio, a man whose career was defined by his unwavering commitment to justice for the common person, found himself facing an adversary who seemed to inhabit a different plane of existence, a realm where rules were, perhaps, mere guidelines. As the video feed momentarily froze, leaving Musk's confident, almost dismissive expression hanging in the digital space, Judge Caprio leaned forward, a thoughtful, almost pensive expression on his face. He wasn't just contemplating a legal response. He was weighing the scales of justice against the immense power of a modern-day industrialist. What would a judge known for his empathy do when faced with such blatant disregard for the very principles he upheld? The stage was set for a confrontation that would shock America. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. The story of Judge Frank Caprio begins not in the hallowed halls of a federal court, but in the bustling, working-class streets of Providence, Rhode Island. Here, he isn't just a judge. He's a beloved community figure, instantly recognizable from his widely syndicated television show, Caught in Providence. Viewers across the nation have witnessed his courtroom, a place where justice is dispensed with a rare blend of compassion, wisdom, and often a touch of humor. Clips of him listening patiently to defendants, offering sage advice, and occasionally even reaching into his own pocket to pay a fine for someone truly down on their luck, have endeared him to millions. His court isn't merely a legal arena. It's a microcosm of community life, a place where individual stories are heard, and where people, regardless of their station, are treated with dignity and respect. This empathetic approach is deeply rooted in his personal history. Caprio comes from a working-class background, the son of an immigrant father who instilled in him the values of hard work, fairness, and understanding the struggles of everyday people. This is his world, a place where the human element is paramount, and where the law serves as a tool for justice, not merely a rigid set of rules. Now, let's shift our gaze to the other side of this unfolding drama. The Tesla factory workers in Fremont, California. Their reality is a stark contrast to the quiet, community-focused courtroom. Imagine the sprawling, high-pressure environment of the plant, a hive of activity where the future of automotive technology is being forged. These are not billionaires or tech magnates. These are everyday Americans. They are mechanics with grease under their fingernails, meticulous engineers, fine-tuning robotics, and assembly line workers, their hands moving with practiced precision, building electric vehicles that promise to change the world. They work long hours, often under immense pressure, striving to make a living, support their families, and contribute to what they believe is a revolutionary company. Their lives are far removed from the rarefied air of Silicon Valley boardrooms, or the comfortable familiarity of a Rhode Island courtroom. They rely on established safety regulations and the promise of fair treatment to navigate their physically demanding and often repetitive jobs. Their dedication is undeniable, a testament to their commitment to their work, often in conditions that push the limits of human endurance. In this context, Elon Musk emerges as the enigmatic CEO who built this empire. He is undoubtedly a visionary, a force of nature who has pushed the boundaries of what's possible in space exploration, artificial intelligence, and electric vehicles. Yet, he is also known for operating with a unique, sometimes controversial management style, one that frequently appears to prioritize speed, innovation, and aggressive targets over established protocols, and, at times, employee well-being. Even in the early days, subtle hints of tension began to surface within the factory walls. Whispers circulated among the workers about increasingly aggressive production targets, the kind that often lead to shortcuts being taken. Concerns about overlooked safety issues, minor at first but growing in frequency, started to spread. There was a prevailing culture where questioning leadership was not just discouraged. It was often met with swift, sometimes subtle, repercussions. The unofficial mantra seemed to be, "Elon knows best." While many believed in the mission, an underlying unease, a quiet apprehension, began to grow. The very foundation of trust, so vital in any workplace, was slowly beginning to show cracks, long before Judge Caprio's court became involved. The cracks in the foundation, initially subtle whispers and quiet apprehensions, were not isolated incidents, but rather symptoms of a deeper, systemic issue that had been festering within Tesla for years. The defiance witnessed in Judge Caprio's courtroom was not a sudden anomaly, but the culmination of a long-standing pattern of disregard for worker safety and well-being. The relationship, or rather the lack thereof, between management and the workforce had deteriorated steadily, marked by a series of incidents that painted a troubling picture. Former employees, speaking anonymously or through legal channels, recounted stories of ignored safety reports, particularly in the high-risk environments of the paint shop and assembly lines. These weren't mere oversights, they were often explicit warnings about faulty machinery, inadequate protective gear, or hazardous working conditions that went unaddressed, leading inevitably to a tragic procession of injuries. Workers reported ergonomic issues leading to repetitive strain injuries, exposure to toxic fumes due to poor ventilation, and incidents involving heavy machinery that could have been prevented with proper maintenance and training. The narrative began to emerge that production quotas often superseded the fundamental need for a safe working environment. Central to this deterioration was Elon Musk's infamous production hell mentality, a period during the ramp-up of the Model 3 where aggressive deadlines became the absolute priority. The drive to meet these targets, while celebrated for its audacity, came at a steep human cost. Corners were cut, safety protocols were reportedly relaxed, and workers were pushed to their physical and mental limits. This relentless pressure directly correlated with a documented increase in worker injuries and stress-related illnesses. The factory floor, meant to be a place of innovation, transformed into a pressure cooker, where the pursuit of speed often meant sacrificing the welfare of those on the front lines. Broken promises became another recurring theme. Examples abounded of management pledging improved conditions, better equipment, or enhanced benefits, only for these commitments to evaporate or be indefinitely postponed. There was a particularly poignant instance where a worker, severely injured due to a known equipment malfunction, felt abandoned by the company, struggling to navigate medical bills and recovery without adequate support. Such stories, shared quietly among colleagues, fostered a deep sense of betrayal and a growing belief that their well-being was secondary to the company's ambitious goals. Adding to this toxic environment were the persistent allegations of union busting. Tesla had a well-documented history of resisting unionization efforts, often employing tactics that made workers feel isolated and powerless. This created an atmosphere where employees felt they had little voice, no collective bargaining power to address their grievances, and a pervasive fear of retaliation for speaking out. Without the protective shield of a union, individual workers were left vulnerable, their concerns easily dismissed by a management structure that seemed impervious to dissent. Musk himself, through his public statements, often exacerbated these tensions. There were instances where he publicly downplayed worker concerns, dismissed complaints as minor, or even mocked those who dared to raise issues. His tweets and public comments, while often entertaining to his followers, were deeply alienating to the very workforce whose labor fueled his empire. This created a chasm of distrust, signaling that the company's leader was either unaware or uncaring about the realities faced by his employees. These weren't just isolated issues. They were a consistent, alarming pattern that slowly but surely eroded trust and built a deep reservoir of resentment among the workers. The cumulative effect was a workforce that felt unheard, unprotected, and increasingly marginalized. The court order that Musk so casually defied in Judge Caprio's courtroom was not an arbitrary judicial intervention. It was a direct, legally mandated response to these long-standing systemic issues. The audience now understood that the workers, having exhausted internal avenues and feeling utterly unprotected, had been left with no choice but to seek legal recourse, hoping that the justice system would provide the voice and protection that their employer had so consistently denied them. The narration explains that after years of feeling ignored, facing a litany of unaddressed injuries, and enduring a culture that prioritized production over people, a determined group of Tesla workers collectively decided they had finally had enough. Individual complaints, hushed conversations, and even formal grievances had consistently fallen on deaf ears, or, worse, resulted in subtle forms of retaliation. They realized that their disparate voices, no matter how legitimate their concerns, were simply not being heard within the vast, fast-paced ecosystem of Tesla. A fundamental shift in strategy was needed. This wasn't a sudden, impulsive decision born of anger, but a quiet, methodical resolve that slowly solidified over months, even years. It began not with a loud protest or a public outcry, but with a series of discreet meetings, often held after long shifts, away from the prying eyes of management, in unassuming community centers, or even in the quiet corners of local coffee shops. These gatherings were fueled by a shared sense of injustice and a growing belief that external intervention was their only remaining recourse. Their initial step was to seek legal counsel. They understood that challenging a titan like Elon Musk and a company as powerful and well-resourced as Tesla required not just courage, but strategic legal expertise. They quietly connected with labor advocates and lawyers specializing in worker rights, attorneys who had a proven track record of standing up for the vulnerable against formidable corporate entities. These legal professionals listened patiently, taking meticulous notes, their expressions often grim as the full scope of the workers' experiences unfolded. What followed was a period of intense and painstaking planning. This wasn't a process driven by emotion, but by a meticulous, almost forensic, dedication to detail. The lawyers advised the workers on the critical importance of gathering irrefutable evidence. This mandate transformed the workers from mere complainants into diligent investigators. They began to meticulously document every safety violation they witnessed, every near miss, every injury, no matter how minor it seemed at the time. This documentation included taking discrete photographs of faulty machinery, unsafe workstations, and inadequate safety equipment. They saved internal communications, emails, and memos that revealed management's awareness of issues that later went unaddressed. They compiled a growing list of witness testimonies, carefully recounting incidents and the company's response, or lack thereof. All of this was done with an acute awareness of the need for discretion, knowing that any premature leak could jeopardize their efforts and potentially expose them to further retribution. The process of building their case was slow, arduous, and emotionally taxing. Each piece of evidence, each testimony, was a painful reminder of the conditions they had endured. Yet, with each document, each whispered account, their case grew stronger, more robust, and undeniably compelling. The lawyers helped them to connect the dots, to identify patterns, and to frame their individual experiences within the larger context of systemic breaches of safety regulations and labor laws. They understood that to effectively challenge someone as powerful and influential as Elon Musk, their evidence had to be absolutely rock solid, leaving no room for doubt or dismissal. The initial court order that Elon Musk so defiantly dismissed in Part 1 was a direct and inevitable result of this meticulous work. It wasn't a random judicial decree. It was a preliminary injunction or an initial ruling issued by the court based on the compelling evidence presented by the workers' dedicated legal team. It represented the first crack in Tesla's seemingly impenetrable armor, a signal that their quiet, methodical pursuit of justice was finally beginning to yield tangible results. This narrative sharply contrasts with the public image of Tesla as a revolutionary company, a beacon of innovation, and Elon Musk as an untouchable visionary. While Musk was launching rockets, tweeting provocative statements, and capturing global headlines, these workers, the very backbone of his empire, were diligently and quietly building their case, piece by painful piece. Their determination was not born of malice, but from a profound and enduring sense of injustice. They weren't seeking to destroy Tesla. They were seeking to redeem its promise of a better future, not just for its products, but for its people. They wanted a workplace where their safety and dignity were as valued as the cars they meticulously assembled. The courtroom, once again, crackled with a palpable tension, a stark contrast to the usual quiet dignity of Judge Caprio's domain. Elon Musk, still appearing via video call, perhaps looked a shade less confident than before, the slight smirk replaced by a more guarded, almost wary expression. The judge, his face a canvas of calm authority, took a slow, deliberate breath, his gaze sweeping across the virtual space, settling momentarily on Musk. It was clear that the time for pleasantries and dismissals had passed. Judge Caprio, known for his empathetic yet unyielding approach to justice, did not raise his voice. There was no theatrical gavel bang, no fiery rhetoric. Instead, he began to speak with a quiet, measured precision, systematically dismantling Musk's defiant position with the surgical exactitude of a seasoned legal mind. His tone was not accusatory, but rather one of profound disappointment mixed with an unwavering commitment to the law. He started by citing specific examples of worker injuries that had been meticulously documented and presented to the court. These weren't abstract statistics. They were human stories, each one a stark contradiction to Musk's implied claim of superior internal procedures. He spoke of the assembly line worker who suffered a debilitating back injury due to a faulty ergonomic setup that had been reported multiple times. He detailed the chronic respiratory issues developed by employees in the paint shop, directly linked to inadequate ventilation systems that were known to management. He recounted the alarming frequency of lacerations and contusions from machinery that lacked proper safety guards, incidents that could have been easily prevented. These were not isolated incidents, he emphasized, but a consistent pattern of neglect that painted a grim picture of the working environment. Then, he moved to the evidence that truly began to shift the atmosphere in the virtual courtroom. With a calm, steady voice, Judge Caprio referenced internal Tesla documents and worker testimonies. He made it clear that while the names of the brave individuals who had come forward would remain protected, their accounts, corroborated by company records, painted an undeniable picture. He spoke of risk assessment reports that were shelved, maintenance requests that went ignored, and internal communications that revealed a clear awareness of safety deficiencies that were never adequately addressed. These weren't just anecdotal complaints. They were hard, verifiable facts, showing a pattern of corporate disregard for established safety protocols, rather than just isolated, unavoidable incidents. He highlighted instances where production quotas were demonstrably prioritized over employee well-being, where the drive for speed superseded the fundamental duty of care. Judge Caprio then meticulously laid out the legal precedents. He articulated, with crystal clarity, that corporate innovation, no matter how groundbreaking or revolutionary, did not and could not exempt a company from labor laws and safety regulations designed to protect human lives. He reminded everyone present that the pursuit of progress must always be tempered by an unwavering commitment to ethical conduct and the basic rights of every individual. The law, he stated, applied equally to all, from the smallest startup to the largest multinational corporation, and no amount of ambition could circumvent its fundamental principles. Musk's expression, which had initially been one of guarded confidence, visibly changed. The defiance flickered, replaced by a genuine surprise, perhaps even a flicker of anger, as the weight of the evidence pressed down upon him. He shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting, and he seemed to gather himself to interrupt, perhaps to argue a point or deflect the accusations. But Judge Caprio, anticipating the move, firmly but politely cut him off, asserting the court's authority with a quiet dignity that brooked no challenge. "Mr. Musk," the judge stated, his voice unwavering, "this court has heard all the necessary arguments and reviewed all the pertinent evidence. Your opportunity to present your defense has passed." The judge leaned forward slightly, his gaze piercing, encompassing not just Musk, but the silent, unseen audience of workers and onlookers. He then delivered his verdict, a judgment that would reverberate far beyond the confines of his Providence courtroom. It was not merely a fine, though substantial penalties would certainly be levied. It was something far more impactful, a decision designed not just to punish, but to fundamentally alter the corporate culture that had allowed such conditions to persist. Judge Caprio ordered mandatory, independently monitored safety overhauls across all Tesla facilities, not just in Fremont, but globally, wherever similar production processes were in place. These overhauls would be overseen by a court-appointed independent panel of safety experts, whose findings would be legally binding. Furthermore, he imposed a daily fine of a staggering amount for every day that Tesla failed to demonstrate full compliance with the new safety directives. But the most shocking measure, the one that truly underscored the court's resolve, was the immediate, temporary halt of specific production lines found to be egregiously unsafe until such time as they could be certified as fully compliant by the independent monitors. The shock came from the sheer scale and specificity of the judgment, a clear demonstration that the court had done its homework, meticulously dissecting every detail, and was utterly unintimidated by the corporate power it faced. He concluded by making it unequivocally clear that the court's primary and overriding concern was the safety and well-being of the workers, a concern that would always take precedence over corporate profits or ambitious production targets. The immediate and long-term consequences for Elon Musk and Tesla were profound, a seismic shift in the corporate landscape that rippled through the tech world and beyond. The financial impact was staggering. The hefty fines levied by Judge Caprio, coupled with the immense cost of implementing the court-mandated safety measures across all global facilities, amounted to billions. This wasn't merely a slap on the wrist. It was a significant drain on resources, forcing a reevaluation of Tesla's capital allocation and operational priorities. The temporary halting of production lines, while necessary for worker safety, also led to substantial revenue losses, impacting delivery schedules and investor confidence. The stock, once seemingly invincible, experienced a noticeable dip, reflecting the market's unease with the newly imposed regulatory burdens and the tarnished image of its visionary leader. Beyond the immediate financial hit, the reputational damage was perhaps even more significant. Elon Musk, once largely perceived as an unblemished innovator, a real-life Tony Stark, saw his public narrative undergo a dramatic shift. The story of the innovative genius was now irrevocably tempered by the harsh reality of worker exploitation. Media outlets, once fawning, now scrutinized every move, highlighting the stark contrast between Tesla's futuristic products and its seemingly archaic labor practices. The carefully curated image of a company leading humanity into a new era was now shadowed by allegations of disregard for the very humans building that future. This increased public awareness also led to heightened scrutiny from regulatory bodies worldwide, initiating investigations into Tesla's labor practices in other countries, creating a cascade of legal and operational challenges. Internally, Tesla was forced into a profound reevaluation of its internal safety protocols and worker relations. The court's ruling became a catalyst for change, driving a top-down mandate to prioritize safety. New, robust reporting mechanisms were implemented, encouraging workers to voice concerns without fear of reprisal. Significant investments were made in ergonomic equipment, advanced safety training, and a complete overhaul of maintenance schedules. There were even discussions, previously unthinkable, about increasing worker representation on internal safety committees, fostering a more responsive and empathetic HR department. The culture, once characterized by a relentless, sometimes brutal, drive for production, began to slowly pivot towards one that, at least publicly, championed employee well-being as much as innovation. For the workers, the narrators of this long and arduous journey, the outcome brought a profound sense of vindication. Their voices, long ignored and suppressed, had finally been heard, not just by a sympathetic judge, but by the world. While the scars of past injuries and indignities remained, there was a palpable shift in the factory floor. Improved safety conditions were immediately noticeable, and a greater sense of security pervaded their jobs. The fear of speaking up began to dissipate, replaced by a cautious optimism that their concerns would now be taken seriously. The court's decision empowered them, setting a powerful precedent not just for Tesla, but for workers across industries, signaling that even against the most powerful corporations, justice could indeed prevail. It was a testament to their unwavering courage and solidarity. This extraordinary case ultimately served as a profound reflection on dignity, respect, and the enduring power of the rule of law. It underscored the fundamental truth that no matter how powerful, how innovative, or how seemingly untouchable a person or a company may be, the basic rights and safety of individuals must always be upheld. True progress, the kind that genuinely moves humanity forward, isn't solely about technological advancement or groundbreaking products. It must, at its core, be about treating people fairly, ensuring their well-being, and recognizing their inherent worth. The final image, a quiet symbol of enduring justice, could be Judge Caprio, back in his familiar Providence courtroom, his gaze compassionate yet firm, listening patiently to another case. The hustle and bustle of his daily docket continued, a microcosm of the continuous struggle for fairness. His presence, unyielding and empathetic, served as a powerful reminder that justice, though sometimes slow and arduous, could indeed prevail, even against the most formidable opponents, ensuring that the human element remains at the heart of all progress.